Podsmashers of the internet, and welcome to another episode of
80-Bit Podsmash,
where gaming goes to grab a beer.
Oh, wow. A little resonating in my head. We are your hosts, Penguin
And Termite.
And 80-Bit Podsmash is a weekly podcast about video games and where they intersect with topics that you care about. Hence, where gaming goes to grab a beer, because it's where, you know, people in the game culture like to sit down and hash out kind of deeper conversations about video games.
Over a light, refreshing beverage like
Bud Light Orange,
which is what we're trying tonight. It's a new release this year. I've never heard of it, but I guess it's their successor to Bud Light Lime.
Mm-hmm. Which is great. I love me a BLL.
Yeah, BLL.
BLL.
Will you just give me a fist bump?
Huh?
Big Hero 6?
Oh, yeah. No, that wasn't what I was going for. But I'm glad that you had a word association in your mind.
Yeah. So this is Bud Light Orange, which is basically like an orange infusion Bud Light. I mean, you can't...
I'll tell you what I immediately thought of when I took a sip.
What's that?
It made me think of orange Tic Tacs.
Ooh, I didn't think about that.
It tastes exactly like orange Tic Tacs.
Mm-hmm. It's extremely light, very refreshing. Overpowering orange.
It might, I think people who don't really like artificial orange flavor won't like this beer.
Yeah.
Yeah, because it's very, like I said, it tastes like Tic Tacs. So if you don't like orange Tic Tacs, you won't like it. It tastes so strongly of orange Tic Tacs to me.
At least it's natural, according to the bottle. A light lager brewed with real orange peels with natural citrus flavors.
It's a giant macro brewery beer. Anheuser-Busch. Can you really trust Anheuser-Busch? Yeah,
that's why I said it. Says it on the bottle.
It says it on the bottle.
Sarcasm implied.
All right. So Termite and I are in the middle of E3 Mania.
Yeah.
When we're recording this.
It's crazy. There's so much stuff.
So much stuff going on.
We just want to erupt with our excitement.
We are going to control ourselves, though, because y'all are probably sick of hearing about E3 from us. By the time this launches, we will have already launched our bonus episode where we basically just recap everything we were excited about. So we're going to get it all out there. But
you've already heard that. So
yeah, I was going to say, and chronologically, where we're actually recording this before that, because we haven't seen everything yet from E3.
That's true.
So, yes, we're going to try to keep it all contained and talk about something completely different.
Yep.
So, yeah, that's where we are. But other than all the E3 craziness, what's going on?
I'm sick of the rain. I mean, I hate to just, talk about the weather, because it's so, shallow. It's the last thing you talk about over a beer. Is but seriously, every free moment we have is raining.
Yeah.
This is ridiculous.
Yeah.
But we were able to have a birthday party for my son. We had a nice cookout. The weather held off long enough for us to be able to be outside. My parents hooked him up with this new playhouse thing.
Nice.
We spent 4 hours in the yard building, so that was fun. And then we went to King's Dominion, which is a local theme park here on the East Coast. And we got season passes, which I'll get to more in my favorite things.
Nice. I haven't minded the rain so terribly much because our AC is still out. I think I talked about that last week. Oh, yeah,
it's still out.
But it's okay. It's finally getting replaced this Thursday. As I said last week, the homeowner's insurance approved our claim.
Yep.
So Thursday, it's going to be replaced. I'm so excited about having working air conditioner. So by the time everyone hears this,
you will have... Penguin will be cold again.
Oh, Penguin will be cold again, thank God. The weirdest thing that's come out as a result of the increased temperatures in my home, which we have every summer, you are aware, every summer since we moved into that house, we've had some problem with our AC at some point during the summer. So this isn't the first time that our house has been hot or warmer than it normally is. But I guess this is the first time that I left the trash sitting a little too long, and I think a bunch of flies started to spawn. So we're just now on the tail end of just having this fly infestation start to clear out, kind of naturally. I mean, we did the trick with the bowl and the apple cider vinegar and the dish soap, and that killed a bunch of them. I also just took the fly swatter and just went crazy, penguin rage. Get
all your stage combat skills out.
Yeah, totally. Did some fun crosses and some binds, and those are sword fighting terms.
I thought you were just reading Wave Kings to me.
And so I killed a bunch of them, but there's still there's still plenty of them there. They like to hang out in the windows though, so what I've done to just sort of for peace of mind is I've just closed all the blinds. And so they're all on the other side of the blind, so I don't see them, kind of out of sight, out of mind. But I think they're going to kind of clear out on their own. And then when we get AC back, I'm hoping the temperature becomes low enough that they're...
Did you leave trash in the garage that they got in?
No. I left just in the kitchen. It wasn't even that long. It's just, natural accumulation of trash, but I guess it just sat there a little too long, and since it got hot, I think fly spawning season has maybe started. I don't know. I have a bunch of flies. It's gross.
We found ants in our bathroom.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
Freaking hate it.
You want ants? Because that's how you get ants.
That's how you get an ant? Egg?
Ant? Her?
We just referenced like 8 shows.
I was gonna say, I was like a bunch of comedies. No, the dying flies, the flies, like fly corpses that have been on our kitchen floor, I think those have been attracting ants too. So there's been like little ants coming in.
What about Gimli?
Gimli ate a couple of them, but he hasn't really
food.
The best thing is when the flies will fly around his face and he'll snap at them and go...
Does he get them?
I don't think I've ever seen him get them, but
cool.
but he just snaps at him. It's cute.
Mm-hmm.
So,
for those of you who want to see Gimli, check out our Instagram.
Yep.
There's a picture of him staring down a bowl of soup like it's going to be his last meal.
My wife came in after seeing that picture and just stared at me, trying to recreate the... because I said, find someone who stares at you the way that Gimli stares at this bowl of soup.
Yeah.
It wasn't so much the look on his face, and that's what I couldn't capture in the picture, unfortunately, which would have made more sense, but it was the fact that he didn't take his eyes off the bowl of soup. I would, move it and follow, or just scan, even at soup is what it says, so, yeah, that's what was important about that picture, not so much the actual look on his face.
Speaking of Instagram, you guys can find us on Twitter, Instagram, Facebook, and Reddit, all 80-Bit Podsmash.
You can see my cute
uppercases, no lowercases, no hyphens. But you can see our platinum trophies, you can see our dogs and cats and kids and video game shenanigans, as well as our Taco Bell feasts.
It's become my ritual, right? Getting Taco Bell after we record at your house.
It's about to be way easier because there's a brand new Taco Bell opening right outside my house.
This is now a podcast about Taco Bell.
Okay, and what's your favorite thing to order off the menu? And what is your process for how to order it?
We are not corporate shills, I promise you.
Everyone go to Twitter right now and just tag us and Taco Bell in the same thing and see what happens. Tell us to get us some free Taco Bell and we'll sponsor them every week.
Free chalupas.
Right now, if you're driving, just pull the car over. And just tweet right now at Taco Bell and at 80-Bit Podsmash. Hook these guys up with free Taco Bell, and we'll talk about it every week.
Yeah, or
if you're running, stop running, take a breather, pull out your phone, and don't worry about your pace. You'll be all right. It'll be good.
So Taco Bell is one of my favorite things.
But doing this podcast is our favorite thing. Doing this podcast is our favorite thing.
Oh, that was a masterful segue right there.
It really was. Dan way, if you will.
Yeah. Favorite Things is a segment that we like to do before we get into our main topic, where we update y'all on what we're digging this week. And I've done this spiel so many times, but it could be something from pop culture. It could be something
food related.
I always say that I'm like, it's food. And it could just be something that's going on that is just your favorite thing for the week. So.
Movies, books, games, foods, and drinks.
Mm-hmm.
Oh my!
Crazy psychological epiphanies that you had in the middle
Existential
of the week.
crisis. Why not?
My whole life is actually, that's what I tell my wife. I say,
what do you say?
What do I say to her?
What do you say?
I say something along the lines of
started with I do.
Oh, and then it became, I'm just trying to make your life an existential crisis like mine.
Aren't you glad you're married?
Yep, I'm just trying to drive my wife into pure madness.
Okay.
But I've told her she can't get out of this marriage until she murders me.
Is that what it is?
Mm-hmm.
Or she dies first?
Well, then I get out of the marriage.
Well, she is too. I mean,
well, yeah, that's fair. Till death.
So what's your favorite thing?
My favorite thing, I had for 2 weeks cravings for banchan chicken.
Oh yeah,
and I finally got it. I did it on Saturday. It was really funny because we were going over to some friend's house and there had been talk of cooking out, like all of us grilling out together. Mm-hmm. And then my wife said, well, no, let's go ahead and go pick up banchan. And I assumed that was because everyone else was just going to go grab their own food and bring it there. So we're walking up to the house with banchan in hand. And I was like, so so everyone else is bringing their own food? And she goes, oh no, everyone else is grilling out together. I'm like, so I'm sitting there eating my banchan while everyone else is grilling up burgers and I'm like, this is weirdly embarrassing, and yet at the same time, I'm satisfying this craving I've had for 2 weeks, and I'm loving it.
Banchan is so good.
Banchan, for those who don't know,
Korean
I guess it's a chain. I think it's a national chain.
Yeah.
So I normally don't like necessarily like big chain restaurants
Except
more
for
than
Taco Bell.
Well, yeah. I mean, other than like my fast food favorites, I don't really like big restaurants because I'm like, oh, if I'm gonna go sit down and like have a sit down restaurant experience, I'd like to go somewhere local, somewhere that's unique to the town that I'm in. Because I can go to Ruby Tuesdays in any city across the East Coast. Not that I would go to Ruby Tuesdays, but I use that as an example. But Banchan just has it's such good, like the spicy hot Korean chicken. It's not the spiciest thing, but it is definitely like that good level of heat. Yeah, I was digging it. So, Banchan. That's your Korean favorite chicken. That's my favorite thing this week.
My favorite thing is the company I work for puts on an ice cream social every year at King's Dominion.
Whoa!
And with it, we get free tickets to the park and free parking and a ticket to the pavilion area to get ice cream. My favorite thing about this situation is we were able to upgrade those tickets that we did not pay for to season passes and pay the difference.
Oh, nice.
So we got super discounted season passes because like 2/3 of the cost is already covered. And then we added a meal plan to it. For X amount of dollars, you can have 2 meals per day every single day.
Wow.
For the rest of the year.
That's awesome.
So when my wife takes my son down there, she doesn't have to worry about packing a lunch. We can, like, I can get off work and go pick her up, and we can all go down there for dinner and come home.
That's awesome.
And it's like, there's so much stuff that my 3-year-old can ride and do now because he's tall enough. His height is sufficient to ride all the rides. So I'm really excited about King's Dominion this year. And there's going to be a Halloween stuff and some Christmas stuff.
Spooky.
Yeah.
That's awesome. Cool.
Yep.
And the season pass lasts for the entire
year.
Nice.
All the way through January.
Awesome.
Yep.
Well, that's favorite things for the day. Let's move on to our next segment, which is DLC.
Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday to you. Happy birthday, dear Dan. Happy birthday to you.
What's this?
You are going to have a birthday this week.
I am going to have a birthday this week.
You're going to be 21.
20 plus 8.
You a baby face.
I have my last 20 age. I will be I only have 1 year left until I enter the world of 30s. So to say goodbye to my 29, I guess 10 years of 20, being a 20-something, we have a very special DLC plan. But for those who aren't familiar with what is this DLC, it stands for downloadable content, and it is a little mini segment, little fun thing, little conversation that the two Dans here come up with about anything, mostly game related, but so yes, I guess this DLC, the intention is for y'all to get to know me a little bit more, my 29 years of gaming history and gaming life.
Your whole life, you've been gaming since you came out of the womb.
No, but...
So 29 years of gaming.
I've been a gamer since I came out of the womb.
Hey, there you go. So actually, because of because of the confusion with our timeline recording when this happens, the week you guys are all listening to this is the week of Penguin's birthday.
Yes.
So yes,
right.
We're recording ahead. Your birthday's
it's weird because it still feels like my birthday.
So when is your actual birthday?
My birthday is June 23rd, so when you guys are listening to this, it'll be this Saturday. Or I guess if you're listening to this years later, it's not. But June 23rd.
There you go.
2018 will be my 29th birthday.
All right, sweet. So I have 29 questions. We're going to rapid fire.
29 rapid fire questions. Let's do it.
It's going to be fast. You ready?
Boom.
1 or 1 sentence answers, and that's it.
Okay.
Ready? 1 favorite console.
Nintendo 64.
Okay. 2. I'm not going to say the numbers. We're done. We're done with numbers. I'm just going to keep going. Favorite controller.
My GameCube.
Favorite video game franchise.
Zelda.
Favorite single video game.
Zelda Ocarina of Time / Majora's Mask.
Favorite Halo vehicle.
The Ghost. Love me some Ghost.
Favorite GoldenEye gun.
Oh, gosh, I don't remember them all, but the PK something or other, is that a
little
gun?
black pistol?
No, I hate that one. I also say AK-47 just because the only one I actually remember, other than the golden gun, which is boring.
They were all named because they didn't have licensing, so like they were all named after real life guns. Kind of. No, they were not named after real life guns. But they all look like real life guns.
Sure.
So maybe the P90. Is that what you're talking about?
I don't know. Whatever.
Man, you're no fun. Okay, best favorite fighting game.
Oh, Killer Instinct.
Ooh, I didn't even know that. Okay. Favorite first person shooter.
Borderlands 2.
Ooh. Favorite Marvel superhero.
Ooh. I'll go ahead and say Doctor Strange because I'm digging him right now.
Ooh, okay. Favorite comic book series?
Spider-Man!
Really?
Yeah, actually, those are one of the few comic series I actually read.
Nice.
Yeah, Spider-Man's.
Favorite Shakespeare play?
Macbeth. Macbeth.
Least favorite video game?
Oh, gosh. right now I'm hating really hard on Assassin's Creed franchise right now. So whether it's not my actual, for the sake of speed, I'm just going to say Assassin's Creed.
Least favorite console?
I did not care for the Xbox One. Xbox One right now I'm hating on a lot. So
all right. Favorite MMORPG class?
Druid from World of Warcraft.
Favorite single-player game character?
Single-player game character?
Single video game character. Sorry, I read that wrong. Favorite single video game character?
Ooh, I have a lot of love for Dante from Devil May Cry. Swagger.
Biggest video game disappointment?
I was very disappointed in Destiny 2.
Favorite video game villain? Handsome Jack.
Oh yeah, Handsome Jack! Thank you. Thank you.
I got
Handsome
your
Jack.
back.
You got my back.
Favorite scary game?
The PT.
Ooh,
Silent Hill PT.
I thought you were going to go with Slender Man.
No, Silent Hill PT was just way more psychologically awesome.
Favorite movie?
Favorite movie would be Lord of the Rings, probably Two Towers, specifically if you make me get specific.
Favorite book?
Right now, I'm digging Stormlight Archive, but historically, I would say Lord of the Rings. I know that's one right after another, but you know what? Stormlight Archive might displace Lord of the Rings, so I'll go ahead and say it right now.
All right.
Words of Radiance specifically.
Raging and just calm down. It's okay. Favorite race in video games?
Favorite... Oh,
as in like a race.
Not like...
not
race,
a car.
But yeah.
Like a...
Worgen from World of Warcraft.
How does that go? Favorite midnight release event?
World of Warcraft Burning Crusade.
You are a WoW nerd.
I am, sorry.
Favorite video game to LAN party with?
Probably LAN party specifically?
Yep.
I would probably say like Diablo 3 or Diablo 2.
Yeah. Favorite Borderlands ability?
I love the shield. The shield, reflector shield from the pre-sequel, Athena. Because it would, Captain America. It would bounce around. It's awesome.
Nice.
Yeah.
Favorite non-MMORPG? Favorite RPG that's not an MMO?
I'll say Final Fantasy 7.
Ooh, all right. Favorite Japanese game? That's even more broad, but still kind of...
Yeah, that would probably be Final Fantasy 7 as well.
Okay. All right. Favorite Western game?
Western game, period?
Not Japanese.
Okay, just the Warcraft franchise?
Yeah, it's Blizzard. That's American.
Yeah, okay.
All right. But like Warcraft 3? World of Warcraft.
Probably World of Warcraft. Yeah, if we have to get specific.
And that. Okay. Favorite game older than you?
Oh, man, that's hard.
1988, I believe.
1989 would be, or 88 would be, yeah.
So it has to be older than that. Do you have a game from that's older than you?
I do, yeah. But because I'm not entirely sure, I know that Doom's older than me. Yeah.
Doom. That's a good question. 1993. So you does not.
Ah, okay. So not Doom. Let's say, I guess Pac-Man. I know Pac-Man came out before me.
Pac-Man, I believe, was early.
It was like in the 80s. Yeah. It was featured in
late 70s.
It was featured in Stranger Things. So
1980. Yep. October.
All right, Pac-Man. I'm digging it.
Most anticipated game right now.
Right now, I am on Devil May Cry kick from that trailer at E3.
Cool.
So Devil May Cry 5.
That was the 29th question. So there you go. 29 questions. One for each year you've been on this earth.
Nice. And when we cut it down to leave out the empty space, it'll be less than 20 minutes. And we'll be on to our main topic. So that was our DLC for the day. All right. So I bet you guys are curious to know what we're talking about this week, but you probably saw it in the title of the episode.
Yep, probably. We're going to discuss the difference between PvP and PvE.
Yes, and the effects that it has on the effects that these two major categories have on video games.
Exactly.
And video game design.
Some of you don't even know what that means.
Right.
So what is PvP and PvE?
Right. So they stand for player versus player, PvP, and player versus environment, PvE. So these are two big kind of, I guess you could describe them as philosophies of game design, which are, they are exactly what they sound like. So a player versus player game is a game where two human players are playing against one another and trying to accomplish something.
Two or more.
Yeah.
It'd be like group versus group. But
right.
Everyone's an
yes.
actual gamer.
Yes, everyone is an actual human intelligence behind the avatars that they're playing behind.
And
then, of course, player versus environment, PvE, is you're fighting computer-controlled challenges of some kind or another. So it doesn't necessarily have to be a monster, though it almost always is.
Mm-hmm.
So usually you don't really care about you don't really pay attention to the distinction between these two categories unless you have a game that has both. So MMOs, which we talked about last week, are a great example of a game that has both activities.
Mm-hmm.
You can both PvE, so they have to make a distinction between PvP and PvE because
both are options.
Yeah, you wouldn't necessarily know what
right.
anyone's talking about when they're saying, I fought a bunch of druids last week.
Right.
Were they controlled by players, or were they just part of the computer-controlled simulation?
Exactly.
So, but then again, by the way that the categories are defined, they are still, every game genre falls into one, or every game period falls into either one category or the other. Are you fighting against other players? Your typical multiplayer experience? I guess I should say every game since the early aughts when, multiplayer online games became a thing.
Dungeons and Dragons are PvP.
Yeah, and I guess
that's in the 70s before video games even came out.
Playing arcade games, fighting games, and stuff like that. Yeah, so then again, never mind. I go back to my previous statement. I redact my redaction and say that all games fall into one category or the other.
We can let's start with the arcade. So the arcade was player versus player at its core.
Yeah.
Like, you are literally standing next to the person
right.
that you're competing against, and you have either a score or something that tells you are winning or losing. And it's usually based on your own skill versus their skill. Not anything the game does determines who wins.
Right.
With the exception of some games that are programmed to be like, just mean and have I think of like Mario Party, where right. at the very end, surprise, this person gets an extra star and wins everyone because of something stupid. Right. But anyway, outside of luck, it's usually player versus player is like a fighting game or racing games.
Right.
Yeah. In the arcades.
Yeah. I mean, and these categories, people tend to, like anything, they tend to kind of look on the one they prefer and think it's the best, and then the other one that they don't prefer as much and think it's the worst. Mm-hmm. Now, granted, everybody is complicated and has some games. Everybody probably has some game would be categorized as PvP that they would love, and some game that's categorized as PvE that they would love. Mm-hmm. But there tends to be these generalizations. Oftentimes, you'll hear PvP people complain about how, well, PvE games are just so boring, or PvE in this game is just so boring because there's not much of a challenge to it. Mm-hmm. You're just fighting against a computer. That's not... Yeah. It's always going to be quote, going to be more exciting to play against another person, to match wits or whatever against another person. Right. It's always more exciting when the other person is another human and I can best them. That's kind of what the multiplayer experience has been about.
Right.
Since, those old school games.
And you can apply it to things like chess. Because when when computing came about in like the 70s and 80s, one of the first things that everyone wanted to test is, can a computer beat a man at chess? That was kind of a threshold of the moment the computer could beat man, what have we created? Yeah. Oh no, like AI.
Yeah.
And that was way back then. That's nothing compared to now. But like still having that player versus player it's more invigorating. It can like be more
right, exactly, because we all
fleshed out, if you will.
We all want to challenge ourselves, but also prove that we're better than other people.
Right,
and not necessarily comes from a malicious place, but we all just want there's a friendly spirit of competition that's sort of inherent to the human experience, and that's okay. PvE people tend to think of PvP though as I know that I started to lean more towards PvE when I realized how unfair PvP can be, because PvP can be very hard to balance, especially in a game like an MMO where you also have player versus environment activities. The PvP can get like, okay, well, this class has an ability that is just ridiculously overpowered. And so then it either gets nerfed into oblivion and uselessness, nerf being a word for to make something less powerful than it was before. Yes. The opposite being buff. So if you hear us say nerf or buff is like they made an ability stronger. Nerf is they made an ability weaker. All in the name of balance. Anyways, that's all just to say that, like I know that a lot of PvE people, they see the kind of cooperative, if it is a multiplayer game, it's that, we are cooperating and working together to defeat a predetermined challenge for us, and they can be hard. Dark Souls is a great example of a game that would be categorized as PvE, and yet is obscenely hard and obscenely challenging. Like they can be challenging. They can be challenging as well. But as a gamer that like, okay, well, if I just get the moves right, nothing is really impossible. You just have to put in either the work, the effort, or the time to figure out how to beat it. And I think that's appealing to a lot of people too, because in some PvP circumstances, there's always someone better than you. I learned a long time ago. There's always someone better than me at Halo.
And there's always somebody coming up with a new way to do something. So whereas PvE is you're fighting something static.
Yeah.
It's always going to be the same. Computers are predictable because they're just running algorithms.
Right, yeah.
Whereas people are different. People come up with new strategies. Follow Reddit on a certain game that you're interested in playing multiplayer, and you will see tons and tons of strategies. A patch comes out, things balancing changes, and bam, everyone has completely redone all of their strategies, and the game is totally different.
Yeah.
And I think of like ARMS or Splatoon and all those types of games. Yeah. And of course, you have your shooters too, like Battlefields and Call of Duties.
Overwatch, yeah. Overwatch. And you hear this term, I mean, there's all this terminology surrounding, both categories, PvP and PvE, but you have words like the meta, which is like, this is the combination of things that right now is working the best, know. So Splatoon is a great, Splatoon's a great example. The meta, I remember when I was playing, the meta was like, you had one person with the dual pistols, and you had like two people with the splat, like a specific bucket.
Yep.
And then you had one person with like either the zapper or there's something else, the arrow spray, I think it was. So if you had that combination, like it was unstoppable. So everybody played that combination, and then it just became who played it better. So the meta is important to PvP because it's it kind of determines people. People often see it as a limiting factor, like they want such and such included in the meta because it matches their playstyle, or something in the meta doesn't match their playstyle. They'd be better if this character was available or whatever.
Right.
So, there's all kinds of terminology.
Let's dig into some of the epitomes of each category. It was a good intro as kind of examples of separating the two.
And some terminology to get you guys percolating.
It's like the epitome of each category. So in this discussion, we will go ahead and divide all of the games up to kind of epitomize what they are, so you guys can get a clear understanding of what we're talking about.
Yeah.
So for PvE, player versus environment, I would say these are like your single player games. And the ones that are the most relevant, at least that I'm aware of, are like Horizon Zero Dawn, Zelda Breath of the Wild, and God of War. Those are very strong single player games that have a narrative driven like path that you take as a player. They're both open world and linear in their own regards. Like God of War is a little bit more linear than the other two.
Right.
There's even more linear games that I'm not thinking about right now. Stuff
hundreds of games
of linear games that don't allow you to explore freely, but you're all like you're getting quests from non-player characters or NPCs. You're fulfilling those quests, you're accomplishing your goals, you're fighting your bosses. Everything's controlled by the computer, and you're just the player. You're just going through all by yourself.
Pretty much any game that's labeled single player, any game that literally on the back of the box has one controller, it is by its very nature going to be player versus environment.
Yeah. But there's co-op, like couch co-op games, or like Halo, Gears of War.
Exactly.
And
Diablo, Borderlands, all of those would be considered games that are primarily PvE games. Now Diablo had like a dueling mode in it, but it wasn't the crux of the game. There was no rewards based around it, so it was just hey, let me kill you. It was ridiculous too at certain points. So it is bones to breath. It's
the main challenge
PvE
is not
game.
A person.
Yeah.
Cool. Yep. And then the epitome of PvP games.
Oh gosh, every single competitive first-person shooter esports game, every esports game pretty much. So those are epitomized right now by your Battlefields, your Calls of Duty. Overwatch is really popular right now, big PvP game. MOBAs, those are all pretty much PvP, though we'll talk a little bit about them later and the distinctions within them. RTS games are
completely
absolutely PvP, except instead of controlling one character and mastering one single set of moves, you're mastering hundreds and hundreds of individual units. Fighting games, PvP,
RTS is real-time strategy. Games like StarCraft, Warcraft, where you build up buildings, which then allow you to create units, and then you upgrade those units, and then you create certain combinations of units that you micromanage, sending X units first, followed by Y units that might be ranged, etc.
Now, there are single-player PvP. I guess the Civilization would be a good example of a real-time strategy game that...
They have a PvP mode.
Do they have a PvE
mode? Sorry. They have both.
They do have both. Okay, all right.
There's like a single-player campaign, so to speak, that kind of teaches you how to play.
Gotcha.
And then
that's the same with the StarCrafts, the Warcrafts.
Right.
Age of...
Empires,
that's what it was. It's like Age of something. That's a super classic game that everyone loves.
But that's actually a good segue because those games, RTSs, they're designed at their core as PvP games.
Yes.
And we're going to talk about the distinctions in the game design level, the fundamentals of them, and approaching them from a designer-developer perspective.
Before we do that, though, can we talk about, what are some types of games that have both types of activities and categories?
Destiny.
Yes. So a lot of games of service.
Yeah.
Specifically Destiny, the Destiny style game right now, the loot shooter that has both PvE and PvP modes. So you can go shoot people in an arena, or you can go shoot bosses in an arena.
It's funny, like now I'm thinking about it. Destiny 2 is pretty new. It's irrelevant to most people. When you go into Crucible, the amount of balancing that happens, the difference in your character when you go into that, you're completely scaled down and kind of dumbed down.
Yeah.
Like you have all this gear that you've worked really hard for. You've done all these raids. You have a certain light level. Like you're more powerful clearly than a lot of people.
Yeah.
When you go into that Crucible mode, everything's the same. It's like level playing field. It's like but that's how they do it. That's
right.
The
Well,
design.
But that is something that games that have both activities have been fighting for a long time. So the other big category, which is the one we talked about last week, which is MMOs, MMORPGs specifically, they have always had both. They've always had, you can fight against other people in battlegrounds or arenas or dueling or in the open world, or you can, most of the game is also designed around player versus environment content, raids and dungeons and stuff like that. The trouble that WoW specifically always faced, and every MMO suffers to it from some degree or another, is exactly what you described, is how do we balance the fact that I can go get the best sword in the game by killing a dragon that my raids got on farm?
Yep.
And then I take it into a battleground and I just...
wreck house.
Yeah, just demolish.
I found the sword. I deserve it.
Yeah.
And to some degree, there's a merit. Like, you earned it.
Yeah.
You did that.
Yeah, the game has that system in it. So
you kind of deserve to go wreck house.
Yeah,
but
WoW...
then that's so not fun for everyone else.
Exactly. So it's the big question of, like, especially games that have both activities... And isn't where it's just like it's a single player campaign, so multiplayer games that are designed at their core to be player versus player that have single player modes usually don't have any effect on those two modes are completely separate. But then there are games like like MMOs and stuff like that where they do have an effect. You can get a reward doing one activity that has an effect on the other activity,
right?
And that becomes the question, like how do you balance those two? So let's get into some of those design implications then, and what those design implications have for games. I'm
going to jump right off where you picked up, and that's like if you get a powerful weapon in a single. So we're going to talk about PvE design.
Okay, player versus environment.
We're going to focus on that for a minute. If you get a weapon that's amazing, you found the secret, you've unlocked the code, you've done the hardest quest in the game, you've earned this thing that makes you powerful. When you go back to other enemies, you wreck them, and it makes you feel good. So the design implication or the problem there lies, I don't even know what I'm trying to say anymore.
Yeah, that's fine.
It's the pacing.
Yeah.
Because if you get those rewards too early, the rest of the game feels too easy.
Trivial.
And if you get it too late, then you didn't really... I'm looking at you, Majora's Mask, with the Fierce Deities Mask, right?
Another great example is Darksiders. You get this really powerful set of armor only after you've unlocked all the tool, so you literally only get to use it on the last boss, pretty much like the
it feels wasted. Yeah. Like, cool, I got this cool set, but I can only use it on one boss.
Right.
Like, I really wish I could have done the last third of the game with this. It would have been so much more fun.
Right.
So it's a pacing implication that the developers have to do and have to deal with. So it's all about the single player, and it's kind of like the variables are reduced almost because you're not dealing with online infrastructure, you're not dealing with multiple minds, multiple people trying to do different things at once, and it's more controlled. So it's like, even though Breath of the Wild is the most open world game, there's still so much control in it.
Yep.
And I remember hearing about Nintendo's playtesting is every little change, they would force and split, they would stop development cycles for a week, and they would send the game out, the latest build, to everyone. All the developers, the test team, everyone. And everyone would just play the same thing again. And they would all do different things all on their own because there was no guidance, except for the test team who had specific requirements to check off. But they would just go play it. And they would find all of these random things that don't seem to be related. It's like, we changed the sky and this rock just flew from one end of the area to the other because they messed with a physics variable or something. And it completely wrecked everything. So to find those things... Anyway, I digressed a little bit. The idea is there's still a control because you only have to worry about one player. And if it is a co-op experience, then it's that group of players. So you just have to control the environment a lot.
I will say that the biggest, coming from the MMO side of things, there's still a matter of balancing that goes on, especially when you have a game where you have multiple choices of character class or character customization, gameplay customization options. You still have to, there's still a level of balance you have to do because, again, if you have, what WoW always ran into was, okay, this class just got buffed, or this class just got a really good set that just makes this ability bonkers. Mm-hmm. You got to bring priests to your raid. You have to bring priests. If you don't have a priest, you're not going to do well. Mm-hmm. You know what I mean? So then they would ostracize other classes that could do the same roles. Your shamans would be like, well, I want to heal as on my shaman, and people would be like, no, you have to go DPS, or you have to tank, or whatever.
It's an interesting balance perspective, because instead of nerfing someone because they're overpowering other players, it's balancing all of the class options, so that everyone's got a fair shot based on your preference.
Exactly. You even see that in single player games that have multiple character classes. Mm-hmm. They want all the classes to feel like a good choice.
Right.
And they don't want you to feel like you have to play something that doesn't match your play style.
Right. And this is where I have an issue with some of the Elder Scrolls games, because I feel like if I don't pick the right thing, I'm screwed the whole way through.
Yep.
And that's how I was in Morrowind. Mm-hmm. That's how I was in Oblivion. And then
that's how I was in Skyrim, too.
I didn't even get that far in Skyrim because of that reason. I was like, I want to be an archer mage.
Yeah, I would always
get wrecked because you have light armor and everything kills you in one hit.
Right, and there's things where it's like, you can't shoot a dragon. If you go full melee in that game, you can't bring a dragon even down because
he's flying.
Because he's flying, and you have to do half the damage to him before he lands. So it's like, there are certain things where it's like you have to either invest in spells, or you have to invest in your bow, and that's just like, what if I don't want to do either of those things? What if I want to just be a melee berserker? In my case, I wanted to have a spell in one hand and a sword in the other hand, and that just didn't work at all. I also wanted to play zoomed out in third person mode, and that didn't work either. So for that game, not a good idea.
Yeah.
So definitely. I was like level 10. I just kept dying to everything. Mm-hmm. So, yeah.
And it's interesting how, as a designer or developer, you have to think about everyone as an individual and the players in mass. What are 90% of all the players going to do?
Right.
What are the 10% that are going to deviate?
Right,
What are they going to do? You got to control that, too.
Right. And, well, that's what... I can only imagine that the only games that really don't have to worry about that are the very linear...
Yeah, side-scrolling platformers.
Not even that, but even your game like BioShock. It's very story-driven, but still, it's like, you get a shotgun in this moment because they want you to use the shotgun right now. Mm-hmm. And yes, you have choices, and there are still some choices that you have, and there's not quite as many stakes of I won't be able to... You can almost always find a way to beat any area with whatever weapons you have available.
Yeah, but it's way more difficult and stupid.
Right, but then it's a third of the way through the game, they're like, here's the rocket launcher, and this is the rocket launcher. See, this is where you're going to use, you said, 90%, 99% of the player base are going to use the rocket launcher in this moment. So, I think there are games that don't have to worry about it as much, but any game where, developers want players to make meaningful choices, they have to find a way to do their best to balance those choices, or the quote-unquote, another term, cookie cutter build, or cookie cutter, or meta, I guess that's another word for meta, is going to come about. Everyone's just going to find what's the most effective thing on Reddit or on the internet, and then just do that.
Yeah, and that's what I do whenever I find an overly complex RPG. I'm like, just tell me how to build this character.
Yeah,
I don't have the time to think about it. It's going to work. It's going to be good. Another thing about PvE you just made me think of is the idea that you can show a player, here's this crazy hard threat like a big tank or a vehicle or a mounted gun, and then you just lay a rocket launcher in front of them. It's pretty obvious you're supposed to use it, but that exists only in PvE. Because in a play versus player game, the players are your enemy, and they're not going to do the same thing every time.
They're not going to be like, I have brought my tank out, but here's a rocket launcher for you to take.
Yeah.
They're just going to be like, I'm going to shoot you with my tank. I'm going to use whatever advantage I have to my advantage. Yeah.
Right. And there's praise given to Shigeru Miyamoto for the original Mario game, because the very first level, 1-1, just teaches you the basics without a single word of instruction.
Yeah, that's
it's
awesome.
all just based on the layout of the enemies, the layout of the blocks, and your exploration. And that's very unique to player versus environment. Because the moment you add another player in there and you're playing against that player, you can't do that. Because you don't have control over both. Exactly. You only have control over one.
Cool. So that segues us nicely into what are some design implications of PvP, player versus player?
As I just discussed, you're not going to be able to create a linear storytelling experience when the main antagonist is another player, because
Yeah.
they're going to be completely variable all the time. And from a developer standpoint, you can't control that.
Yep.
I mean, you'd have to put so much control on it that it would be not fun.
Yeah. Yeah, I would say the other biggest implication that actually, and you wrote it down, you talked about the gameplay loop.
Yep.
There's not really, I mean, you can put new maps in the game, you can put new game modes into it, but you can't really be super innovative and creative in the same way that player versus environment allows developers to be. Just look at all the different types of like raid bosses in WoW. Like there's one raid boss where you have to dance, they call it the safety dance. You have to dance in between these erupting platforms, and there's raids that have like all these moving parts, and you have to assign like groups to go through these portals to do these things over here while other things are going on. Like there's all these different permutations of just boss fights and mechanics and all these creative, from a developer standpoint, all these very creative gameplay mechanics that they can do when they, like you said, control. It's the irony of like the level of control they have allows them to give the players so much more interesting things to do.
Yep.
Whereas player versus player, I mean, you're really stuck to like what's, like it's going to be this. It's almost always going to be the same experience every time. What makes it different is the people you're playing against and their level of skill or their level of strategy that allows them to kind of make it different. But the actual experience, the mechanics and everything are almost always going to be the same. Like MOBAs are literally the same map, the same monster layout, and the same
gameplay loop.
That's the gameplay loop. First person shooters are the same thing. All the guns are in the same places, or all the
where you start,
all the control points and spawn points. They may be variable, but they're it's going to be the same 10 spawn points. So so it's almost always the same. Yeah, like you said, it's the same gameplay loop every time.
And now, the funny part, you just made me think about this. There's one game that tried to do the big boss against players. Yeah. And everyone is a player. So it's a 5-player game. Yeah. And there's one big monster and 4 people. And
you're talking about Evolve.
Exactly.
Such a good idea that just did not do well. Well, but I feel like it didn't do well more because of the developer, or not the publisher choices. Because there were so many, it was like only 2 big bosses. Like, you could only play as the Kraken.
No, the content was super limited. Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, I think that game failed more because of the
lack of options.
I feel like if a solid developer like...
Well, apparently there was issues with like player exploits on both sides.
Yeah.
And so it was like people were just cheesing the game all the time. It wasn't as fun as it was. So the idea of this game was that you'd have 4 players that all have different class options. Right. So if you chose the same 4 classes, you're probably going to fail. Right. You're forcing the players to pick some variable.
Yeah, so it's like you want a medic, you want someone who's tanky,
and they would all work together in defeating another player who's this super overpowered, crazy monster. Right. That has tons of HP, tons of like health, tons of defense.
I played it. It was fun. Right. I mean, exploits aside, I didn't know what those exploits were, so I just played with other people, and I mean, I only played it for like a weekend. There was like a free weekend on it. Yeah. It was very fun. Like it was fun to be the monster. It was fun to be the dudes, the soldiers or whatever. Yeah.
It was made by Turtle Rock Studios, who made Left 4 Dead. Yeah. And Left 4 Dead's the perfect player versus environment co-op game. That's amazing. It's a zombie shooting fest. So they actually developed the 2 epitomes to both of these categories. I thought was interesting. Yeah. More recently, Friday the 13th. Just came out kind of like a few months ago, and one player is Jason, like from the horror movie, and then like everyone else are the campers. And most of the time, and this is what's cool, how this is a good example of
that same idea
a player versus player PvP game where one person's overpowered. They actually made it with the implication from the design perspective that all of the campers are going to die.
Oh, nice.
And with that, like, dying doesn't feel like you failed.
Okay,
and so they've done enough with the progression that each round you feel like you've still got something out of it, even though you died by this overpowered Jason. But then killing Jason is that much more rewarding.
Satisfying, yeah.
And it was interesting. I'm only judging this based on reviews and things I've read and heard. I've never played it. I kind of want to. But that's a perfect example of this idea where, people are innovating, gamers are growing up, developers are growing up, everyone's changing, and we're kind of evolving to shape the modern landscape and what people's expectations are. Still, you're not going to have a strong storytell or linear, like, artful experience in a player versus player. Right. Player versus player is going to be aggressive, it's going to be violent, it's going to be fast-paced, usually. I guess like Civilization's kind of slower paced.
Sure.
And you kind of maybe have your own story. If you chose Egypt and I chose China, we just made a story of like China versus Egypt and maybe played out what that could look like by skill. It doesn't really mash.
Yeah,
So
right.
it really is distinct from the story art telling.
Right. Yeah, and we talked about that a lot in our very first episode. The idea of like a game versus so games can kind of be both, but it's the idea of like sport versus art. Mm-hmm. And most PvP experiences are going, though they can have artful aspects to them, they're more going to be along the lines of an e-sport, whereas more single-player driven experiences, they're wanting you to experience something, they're wanting you to get excited, they're wanting you to feel, their intention is to get you to feel things. Mm-hmm. So they're going to, by their very nature, be more of an artful experience. So whereas that kind of competitive nature is to get you to see who's the best, who's on top. Mm-hmm. So let's talk really quickly a little bit about what are some of the PvP where since we talked about MMOs and it's fresh on our minds, and we've actually brought them up plenty in this conversation because when you're talking about PvP and PvE you kind of have to. But what are some of the challenges specific to massively multiplayer games that feature both activities? Mm-hmm. What are some of the other kind of like weird fringe challenges that PvP elements introduce into the game?
We did discuss earlier about the balance. If you have like a strong piece of gear, what does that look like in the player versus player environment? So you need to find a way that balances that so that player doesn't have an advantage over everyone else.
Yeah, and like you said, Destiny answers that by just kind of scaling everybody's stats down. So it's only what the weapons do that gives you any kind of advantage, not necessarily how much damage the weapons do.
Right.
WoW actually answered it really interestingly in Legion because they've struggled with it forever, which is it's almost always been on the side of like PvPers have to go raid because they have to get the gear they need in the raids in order to stomp everybody. That's been the case for a long time. Mm-hmm. Legion, the newest expansion, introduced a concept. They did the same thing that Destiny did where they scale everybody's gear down. So everybody's stats are scaled super down. So gear does still give you a little bit of a stat advantage, but it's minuscule. It's like a fraction of a percentage based on your gear between tiers. The way they made it rewarding is they introduced like a talent system where there are certain abilities that you unlocked only if you PvP'd.
And they can only be used in PvP?
They can only be used in PvP situations as well. So your advantage would come with the toolkit you had. That's where you would have more advantage.
That's ripped right out of Call of Duty.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, because like the leveling system, you would unlock new perks.
Oh, yeah.
That would allow you to do different things, like carpet bombs and napalm and like a nuke at the end if you were good enough. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, the other big challenge that MMOs face with having PvP activities is the open world areas and a phenomenon that we call ganking.
Yep.
It's a term. What the term means is I am a level 12 player just questing my way through this zone. And Termite here is a level 50 player of the opposite faction. And we happen to be in an area where members of the opposite faction can fight each other. Who's going to win in that circumstance?
Clearly the level 50 guy.
It's always going to be the level 50 guy. It's not even going to be a question. They will, another term here, one shot, which means with one ability they will be able to instantly kill the other player.
Mm-hmm. That's called ganking.
It's called ganking, and it is a plague. Yep. Like, it is an awful thing to do to another person. Like, and the reason is because maybe on a one-off situation, if I'm just passing through and I gank someone, whatever, like, they'll get over it. You know what I mean?
However, the toxicity involved.
It's the harassment. Yes, it provides so many opportunities to harass other players. Like, they're just trying to get through. Like, I cannot tell you the amount of times I've been camped, which is another term there, which means that they sit there and watch you, wait for you to respawn and kill you again. Wait for you to respawn, kill you again. Wait for you to respawn, kill you again. I've been camped so many times in that game, and I will admit I have camped on occasion.
You've done this?
I have done it. Now, I haven't gone out of my way to do it, but I have been known to have a temper sometimes when I play games, and when I've been constantly camped, I will then get on my high-level character and
go back. That's different.
Get retribution.
You didn't just do it for fun. You actually had a reason.
Yeah,
retribution is
is swift.
You're not the person that's just scouting the low-level areas.
Yeah, ganking. Another term for it is PK, but that's kind of a more general term. It just means player kill. But yeah, it's something that's been in MMOs forever, which is just how do you deal with that? WoW's new answer for that is in the new expansion, Battle for Azeroth. If you flag yourself, so they're getting rid of the player versus the PvP and PvE server distinction. So there's no longer PvP and PvE servers. All servers are the same.
So you're not separated.
You're not
entirely.
separated by exactly. And now what you'll be able to do is you'll have to, if you want a PvP in the open world, you'll have to flag yourself. And if you are not flagged for PvP, the PvP people won't even see you.
Oh wow!
So you'll be in a whole separate. So if you run across a horde player and you're not flagged for PvP, you'll see them, but they'll be like, you won't be able to attack them. Yeah, essentially.
Huh?
But so all the people who want to actually participate in PvP will have to flag for it. They'll have to say, I want a PvP.
But isn't that how it was always done in PvE servers?
That's how it was always done in PvE servers.
So they essentially just eliminated the PvP servers.
Yes, exactly.
Oh, all right.
Yeah. So, but I think they did announce that they will be providing a experience incentive to be flagged as PvP to make up for the fact that you'll be doing PvP while leveling. Mm-hmm. So that was was the biggest change there. Is like, okay, well, we know you're going to fall behind because you're going to get ganked inevitably. Right. So here's an experience boost. Exactly. Boost. Here's a boost. Cool. All right. So with the last little bit of time, let's talk about where are the lines starting to blur? What games are starting to experiment with the idea of like, can we merge the two categories, the activities? Can we make a game type or even a full game that literally requires you to do both activities in sort of a seamless way? That, PvE for the sake of PvP or PvP for the sake of PvE. Mm-hmm. And what games are experimenting them?
Destiny 2's new Gambit mode.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Sounds like it's like a giant raid that you do with your buddies, and at some point in the middle of that raid, you're going to be entered into a battleground against another faction. Mm-hmm. It sounds crazy.
Yeah, it's called it's from their new expansion called Forsaken, I think is what it is. I don't know. It's coming out this year. Mm-hmm. The idea, what they described, the developers described in the trailer was like, both sides are competing to see who can get the most, like, just think of it as like coins in a slot. So you kill enemies and get coins, and you deposit them in the slot. It's kind of like now that I think about it, it's kind of like the salmon run in Splatoon, except you're doing it against other people. So you're competing to see who can fill up the tank the quickest.
Mm-hmm. But there's no rewards for being better.
Like, in Salmon Run?
Yeah, if I get like 10 orbs and you get 1, there's no benefit to it.
Well, no, but so it would be like you're competing against another team who's collecting salmon eggs.
So which is not that doesn't exist.
That doesn't exist, right? Yeah. So, but in the Gambit mode, that's what it is. You're collecting quote unquote salmon eggs and filling them up in the tank. Okay. Whoever fills their tank up first summons a boss, and they get to fight that boss. Now, where it gets interesting is that if you're on two separate platforms, a portal will open up every once in a while to the other person's platform. You can send one person through to disrupt their stuff.
Yeah,
so there
crazy.
are PvP elements. You're competing against other people, but you're primarily fighting against computer-generated monsters, and then you have to fight a computer-generated boss at the end. So they're experimenting. They're they're actively trying to merge them.
Yeah, that's what I love about the innovation that's happening. Because this distinction, it has been around for the entirety of gaming. And so like now it's like, let's figure out new ways to
combine them. Yeah. WoW is doing it with Battle for Azeroth. They have these things called island expeditions. They were touted as sort of like Warcraft 3 in World of Warcraft. Ooh. So the idea is that you're still controlling your character, but you're like trying to get to these points for resources to generate more troops and stuff like that. You can play where it's kind of a mix between the two. Is you can choose to queue up to play against AI controlled characters. Supposedly it's supposed to be very sophisticated AI.
Interesting.
Whether that will actually pan out or not is to be determined. Or you can play against other players. So you can do these island expeditions. But again, you're fighting monsters primarily to generate troops, and then you'll run into your opposing faction players and stab. Very similar, actually, in a lot of ways to the old Alterac Valley, where you actually had to fight like bosses and stuff.
That was so fun.
And then finally, MOBAs are kind of a mix in and of themselves. So in the lanes in MOBAs, there are these computer-controlled units that you have to kill for experience points. But even more importantly, there's always a role in MOBA. It's called the Jungler, and the Jungler runs around and actually all they do is fight monsters to get loot and experience for their team and stuff like that. But they're also kind of patrolling these in-between areas between the lanes, so they are still, again, part of their job is to like, someone's cutting through to try to get to a different lane. The Jungler usually will like, I'll go head them off and fight them. But again, they're most of what they're doing is like they're killing monsters. So
interesting.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Some MOBAs allow the monsters to be upgraded. At least that's, to me, MOBAs originated in Warcraft 3.
Yeah.
They were created as a custom game type with the level editor. And those game types allowed you to upgrade the computer-generated bots that would go down each lane. And it got more fun that way because you'd have super, like, crazy computer stuff that would just halt the enemy's heroes. And I think a lot of the modern MOBAs that I've played don't have that feature, and that's why I don't like MOBAs.
Yeah.
Interesting.
So,
correct me if I'm wrong.
Sure, yeah.
Internet.
Listeners. Yep. So I don't know if there's a way to perfectly marry the two, because the two by their very nature are antithetical to one another. They are very light and darkness, if you will, kind of point and counterpoint. So almost all of these like fusions, it's still almost always like it's a PvP mode that's meant to have a couple elements of PvE in it, or vice versa. It's a PvE mode, like the Island Expeditions are still kind of a PvE mode with elements of PvP. So it's very hard to it's maybe impossible to completely marry the two, but it's interesting to see that developers are starting to experiment with more. I think Diablo's challenge modes, they have this thing where it's like, can
you defeat something faster than another team or another player?
Yeah, exactly. So it's competitive, and the whole Diablo ladder in the first place, it's competitive, but it's competitive. The activity you're actually doing is just killing monsters faster and better.
Right.
So
you're still against the environment, but you're timed against other players.
Exactly, yeah. So whether that counts as PvP or not, it's not for me to decide.
Yeah.
But cool. What do you think? Last question. What do you think is the future of PvP?
And the merging of the two of them.
Oh yeah,
is really going to be that. Like Destiny 2 is pushing the boundaries of those things, the future of MOBAs and how they evolve.
Yeah.
If Overwatch ever has, like, Team Fortress 2 introduced the kind of co-op variant, like people versus robots or something. It was super fun. So just innovations like that I can't really fathom right now because they don't exist, and I won't know about them until they hit, and they'll be like, oh, that's so cool, it's so innovative. So I like to think of like exploring those spaces and how to do like player versus player inside of an environment of storytelling. Maybe Anthem will have something like that. I hope.
I think really the future, especially when talking about PvE, player versus environment. I think it's important to talk about AI. You have to, because that's what PvE is
competing against.
Exactly. And so you brought up the idea of chess, and like, can we train computers to be better at chess than us?
Yeah.
The answer is yes.
Oh, we have. Yeah.
The answer is we have.
Right,
yeah. Artificial narrow intelligence, which is defined by a computer being able to do a single task better than a human. We have a smartphone is artificial narrow intelligence. We have definitely already designed computers that can 100% beat the best chess players in the world. Chess is a very simple game. When you're talking about video games, you have a whole layer of complexity. But again, I guess I'll have to talk a little bit about E3. But in Microsoft's press conference, they talked about they are trying to push for better, stronger AI in video games. When the AI becomes good enough to learn and adapt and grow, then we face the robot apocalypse. But before we face the robot apocalypse,
we get some really cool
really interesting implications for video games. So what if you had a raid boss that was able to learn and adapt its strategy to you?
That would be crazy.
The players as you go. So it's like that. Those possibilities will possibly offer some very interesting. You could have a game where it's like the boss specifically is designed to be like really easy to beat, but then learns over time, and so the more players that fight it, the harder it becomes, until eventually it gets to the point where no one can beat it, and they have to offer like a super huge reward. Like that's totally a game. Type of game, that could be an entire genre of game that comes out. It makes me think of the Nemesis system in Shadow of War and Shadow of War, where it's like every time you die, they learn, they get better and stronger.
Yeah.
So like that totally is I think the future of PvE, especially as it relates to AI. So
yeah, I guess we highlighted each side. Like PvP can only evolve as much as they can.
Yeah,
I mean, it's very limited, but PvE can add all this crazy.
PvP
stuff.
can again. There's
new game modes.
There's all types of new ways to challenge players. There will always be new creative ways to challenge players, just as there's always going to be stories to tell. There's always going to be new ways to tell stories. There's always going to be new ways to challenge players, new game genres that people would be able to compete to do. We're always coming up with new sports. We're always coming up with new... human competitiveness knows no creative end, I think. Yeah. So that's not something we have to worry about. Like, there will always be like new ways to do that, but the nature of that competitive spirit of like, there's always going to be, I guess, limits, human limitations.
Yep.
I think there's there's a more interesting future, I suppose, in the possibilities that AI brings to the table for PvE.
Mm-hmm.
So,
yep. And
Cool.
then you have virtual reality,
Yeah.
which is crazy, and that throws a wrench into everything.
yeah, it'll make everything crazy.
Yeah, that's the future of all of it, right?
You better start learning how to actually sword fight
Yeah,
now.
there's your stage combat. Yeah.
Because you're going to need it when VR comes around to be the very best, like no one ever was.
Yeah, can you imagine a bunch of like martial artists that are trained by virtual reality?
Yeah.
Just everyone knows how to fight
Yep.
from like birth.
Yep.
Like you're a kid and here's a virtual reality headset.
Boom,
and
you learn how to fight. Yep.
from like a very early age.
Yeah,
Crazy.
It'll be a brave new world, my man.
Wow. Cops and law enforcement, you better step up.
Yep.
Get ready for this.
Start training in VR now.
You go to tackle somebody who robs a bank, and all of a sudden they just whip out some black belt on you.
Yep. Oh, man. Or just robs a virtual bank.
No, that's gonna happen. Cryptocurrency,
You're gonna have to
blockchains.
you're gonna have to be a policeman inside virtual reality at some point.
Ready Player One.
Whoa.
It happened.
Law enforcement inside VR. That's crazy. All right, well, we're getting way off
We've
base
digressed
here.
a little bit.
Yeah, a little bit. But that pretty much wraps up our conversation. That's about all we really wanted to talk about with PvE and PvP. We have a Sony press conference, a live tweet here in a little bit. So you guys will probably have already seen that and hopefully enjoyed it. But we're about to actually live it and do it. That's crazy.
Are.
Timey-wimey. But yes, as always, you can check us out on Twitter, where you can catch up on our live tweets from E3, or you can find us at 80-Bit Podsmash at Twitter at 80-Bit Podsmash. Gosh, how you say it? At 80-Bit Podsmash on Twitter. That's what I'm trying to say.
There you go.
You can also find us on Instagram at 80-Bit Podsmash. You can also find us on Facebook at 80-Bit Podsmash, and you can go to our website 80bitpodsmash.com. You can listen to us if you there. You can find our landing page where all of our episodes are available to stream, or you can stream us on iTunes,
Yep, there's
Google Play.
links on the website to iTunes and Google Play.
Yep, where you can find us there. So hop over to iTunes, write us a review, or Google Play, write a review for us, and just kind of let the internet know what your thoughts are and whether or not you can call yourself a pod smasher.
That's right.
But yeah, till next week, y'all.